Hello and welcome to this episode of From Here to There. This evening we have Hannah Nathans, an alum from the Stamp School, and it's really great to have her. So we're going to jump right in. Hannah, first of all, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, it's great to see you. Um, how did you end up going to the Stamp School?
Um, yes, so going back, I grew up in Ann Arbor, so the university was always pretty present for me. In high school, I loved making art. I think all throughout growing up, I just gravitated toward the visual arts as well as the humanities and literature and art history. So when I visited colleges, I considered which programs would allow me to focus both on visual art and on the liberal arts. And for that reason, I was really drawn to both stamps and the residential college within LSA at Michigan. And I also really like the idea of exploring different types of media and projects my first year to see what resonated, which is a big part or was a big part of the stamps curriculum when I joined, since my background was pretty fluid and I wanted to find out more about what was resonating.
Yeah. And that foundation year exposing students to a lot of different creativity in media that's ongoing. So it's still the bedrock of how everybody starts at stamps. So you mentioned the residential college. Were you duly enrolled as a student?
Yes, so I was in two different degree programs. I was in the degree program in stamps, and I was in the bachelor's degree program in the residential college. So my program was a 5-year program to complete both degrees from 2010 until 2015.
Okay, so you graduated in 2015,
Yes,
and it took 5 years, two
yeah,
degrees.
a long five
Um,
years. I mean, it was great, but I was ready to go by the end.
Oh, I'm sure. And what did so the residential college for people who are on the call who are not familiar, can you tell us a little bit about the residential college and why you felt like that was also a good fit for you?
Sure. So the residential college is essentially a small liberal arts style college within the larger literature, science, and the arts, and it's located in East Quad. And I was really drawn to it because I guess in high school I'd taken a humanities class that I really enjoyed that was super broad and kind of interdisciplinary. And in the RC, they have all these language classes. They're focused on a lot of literature and art history and fine art too in their own way. So in the residential college, I studied something called Arts and Ideas in the Humanities, which was this amazing program focused on like art history, dance, literature, music, and visual arts from ancient history through the present. And it was just so broad. And I would write essays comparing like a Virginia Woolf novel to a Barbara Hepworth sculpture. And I really liked that.
Very cool, very cool. So do you have any particular memories of your time at the university that really stand out for you?
um, any particular memories? I guess in general, my strongest memories are actually probably tied to all the student organizations that I was involved with. I think for me, it was a really incredible hands-on way of learning and finding different like-minded communities. And Michigan is such an incredible, huge school that you can really find so many just different types of people with different interests. And I think college is such a great time to explore those interests, as many as you can. So I was super involved in the residential colleges, like Literary Arts Magazine, in this forum that discussed urban planning. I started an a cappella group, the Sirens. I was like a campus day tour guide. So there was a lot going on. And I think so many of my really happy and intense memories are tied to, I think I'm also someone who really enjoys working in groups and working with people. So um, I just really loved participating in those groups. And that was also actually coincidentally like how I discovered I was drawn to graphic design. Since some of my first design projects were for my different student organizations. Like I worked on layouts and illustrations for the Residential College Arts Journal and like a logo and print marketing materials for the a cappella group. So that actually helped pivot my focus within the art school to graphic design.
Yeah, I actually work with a lot of students and alums who had similar experiences where it was getting involved with a student org that allowed them to actually discover, wait a minute, I like branding. I like identity design. I like creating something that, you know, I can share with other people and, sometimes a lot of other people, depending on the purpose. So, yeah, this is not unusual. I love that. Did you have a favorite student work?
Oh my gosh, I don't know if I can pick a favorite student org. I mean, I feel like the a cappella group in a weird way like was my child since we
Yeah.
started it. So took everything. But I also really loved, I don't think I mentioned, I was also part of TEDx U of M my senior year.
Oh, good
Um,
call. Yeah.
and that was, I think, also a huge pivot moment for me in realizing that I liked design, that I liked working with spatial design and like architects or industrial design minded people. Um, and that also is what helped like Frank and Hannah, I think, in particular, where they were like, what do you want to do after graduation? What do you like doing now? And I wasn't really sure, but I told them I really enjoyed my TEDx work. And they're like, oh, well, you should look into exhibit design or spatial design and environment. So that really helped guide me. I think that was really formative.
Yeah, a lot of students don't know about environmental design, and that graphic designers actually play a big role in creating environments. So that's a really cool thing that you learned that, oh my gosh, you can marry these things. So
Yeah,
I love that.
absolutely.
Yeah.
It's such a broad field.
Oh, and then in-person marketing and creating experiences for people, there's so much overlap. Yeah. Um, so looking back, um, I don't know if you had any absolute favorite courses, but you already mentioned Frank and Hannah, so obviously taking courses with them was something you enjoyed. Have you ever experienced sort of a full circle moment where in your professional life now you have that sort of aha moment, like, oh my God, I learned this in this course and I never thought I would use it.
Yes, absolutely. I think when I was reflecting on my classes, something that really stood out to me was there was a class with Frank, and I can't remember the name of the class, but um, he introduced us to the work of the Vignellis and their just incredibly interdisciplinary design practice. And I think after, so, your first year in stamps, or for me, I went so wide into all these different media and types of projects. And then after that, I was trying to zero in into just graphic design and figuring out what that meant. So it was from that context, after focusing on typography and layout and print in, I guess, print formats for a little while, that it was incredible to sort of see their work and how actually broad design can be, kind of like going out from going wide to going really narrow, and then kind of going wide again within that field. um, so I think seeing their work, yeah, just really delighted me, specifically this idea that designers can work across different scales, different media, different industries. And I think that's also totally like Stamp's ethos. So I remember one assignment in particular from that class where we were tasked with, I think, designing an industrial design piece, both the object and its branding, which seemed in retrospect like such a Frank project, and that I think he just really believes in the capacity of designers to do everything. And I was inspired by the MoMA design store and its range of beautiful, like well-designed pieces for the home or wearables, things like that. Um, so I designed tessellated coasters that were cut out of acrylic and fit together in different formations, and also worked on the branding of what that packaging would look like. Um, and so it feels really full circle because my current studio, like 6 years, 7 years into my design career, my current studio, half the practice is brand design and half is industrial design. And they receive a brief from MoMA to design projects for MoMA Design Store. So I actually got to work on this proposal with industrial designers, which I just realized when I was thinking about this question. And it was just so fun and out of my comfort zone. And the industrial designers were very supportive and very patient with graphic designers trying their hand at industrial design pieces.
I love that. Oh my gosh, from moment to moment. Um, so you had some really great learning experiences outside of the classroom with the student orgs. Did you have other outside the classroom experiences like internships or part-time jobs while you were a student?
Yes, internships were definitely on my mind. I guess I started relatively early on to sort of figure out different types to see what resonated. So I just remember trying a bunch of different things. So, like one summer, I interned for a now closed gallery, sadly, that was on Main Street where the Shinola store is. It was called Silo Chevelle Gallery, and it just had these stunning
Yeah,
window displays. And I think went into the gallery one day and just asked, like, I don't, can I help out with this? Like, is there someone who I can work for? And they introduced me to him. And so I interned with him, which was incredible, with that, I guess, creative director. One summer I interned for Ann Arbor's like public arts commission. And I think that summer I also worked at the Ann Arbor Art Center summer camp. I think the summer after that, I went to the Baltimore Museum of Art, focused on education programming. And the other 3 days that summer, that was 2 days a week. And then the other 3 days, I interned for a local development company doing some research and design. So my internships were very eclectic and kind of broad because, again, I didn't really know what I wanted until midway end of college. So at that point, then I tried to get an internship and got an internship at a small branding studio downtown called Prior Design Company.
yeah,
Um,
yeah, prayer.
yeah, so over time, I guess all those experiences sort of added up and just gave me a foundation both on my resume and also to experience what resonated, like what felt like a good fit. And it was interesting because some of these internships were so eclectic. Like there would be so many different tasks I'd work on. Like some of it would be research and some of it would be smaller design assignments. And I really enjoyed the design assignments. And I think that was sort of when I realized I had to listen to my gut and just try to find more internships and jobs like that.
Cool. Very, very cool. Um, so do you think that some of the eclectic internship and obviously student org work, it helped clarify direction for sure. But I'm imagining you probably picked up transferable skills that you weren't even aware of at the time. You know, whether that's with communication or organization. You know, what do you think? What kind of transferable skills that you picked up at that time that maybe you're probably still using today?
Transferable skills. Well, I think, yeah, as you mentioned, just being organized, being self-motivated, being really curious. I think that was something that I definitely picked up early on that hopefully hasn't changed. I think for whatever reason, I'm drawn to new and different things and just constantly learning. So I'm never fully familiar in whatever environment I'm in. I mean, now I bring more knowledge to the table, of course, but I think it's really good to just be curious, especially when you're young. Like you don't know what you don't know, and people don't expect you to know. So, um, like I would just take a lot of notes and ask people a lot of questions, and tried not to be afraid of asking what I felt were stupid questions because I really don't think there are any.
Yeah,
So yeah.
yeah, agreed. I think that's one of the really important things, especially with interning, is to try and put your fear aside and just be able to learn and absorb and ask questions. So I love that. Um, so let's talk about your senior year. You had, you know, these two degrees that you were going for, and I'm wondering, were you the type of student that tried to keep it even throughout all the time? Or were you like, okay, I'm done with my stamps degree at the end of the fourth year, so I'm going to finish up my arts and ideas degree? How did that play out for you?
No, it never felt very even, I would say. I think at the time that I started in the dual degree program. I don't know how common it was at that point or if the programs were recommended to be staggered. So I really always felt like I was shifting gears, for better and for worse, I guess.
So what did that last year look like for you?
Yeah, I think it was definitely a stressful year. In some ways, I was doing too much. I was leading the design for TEDx, which was basically, I basically treated it like my thesis in a way, since I wasn't doing the BFA program. I was trying to cram in design classes since I started design really only halfway through undergrad after focusing on painting and humanities. I was interning at Prior, the branding studio. I might still have been working with Lisa at the University Unions, which is a
Lisa
really,
Bartlett. Yeah.
yeah, she was amazing.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
Cool.
that
Yeah.
was one of my favorite experiences too. I should have mentioned that earlier.
Yeah, for the students on the call, Lisa has retired, unfortunately,
Oh,
because she ran the union's graphic design shop, and she would take on STEM students every year as interns with her, and it was very real, this experience. You had real clients, you had real deadlines. It was, very much getting you prepared for the real world. Um, yeah, I actually I miss, sending students over to Lisa.
yeah, she was really wonderful.
Yeah.
But I just think in general, I was trying to synthesize these experiences in the classroom and in internships. I think it was like apples and oranges. So I was trying to navigate that. In a way, I think classes can be really cerebral or very focused on like design theory and history, and students have a lot of creative control over most projects as well as work across the entire process. Like you're probably working on research and a conceptual phase, you're developing your projects, etc. Um, and then internships were that foil for me in the sense that you're sort of brought on to do a usually like pretty specific task or work within a team. And my experience sort of helped me realize that can mean a narrower focus. So it was really helpful for me because I actually needed parameters at the time. I think that actually helped me focus. And I also think internships were helping me um, focus on craft in a way, since you're so focused in working on a specific task and doing that task at a really high level and really like mastering the computer programs that you're using, and professional standards and working within defined client briefs. So I think I was letting that synthesize and helping that sort of was helping to inform some of my student work, because then I was also able to appreciate class and able to appreciate like um, some of the broadness and some of the ownership over work that you don't always have necessarily for internships. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, and I also was trying to just reach out to many of the like interesting and talented people at my internships. I think this is such an important thing, is just to try to meet those people and make some of those relationships, especially when you're young. They can just share so much context and feedback and recommendations. And I think people really do want to help if you show that you're engaged and motivated.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah. But
Completely.
okay, I'm sorry. You asked about senior year and I got off topic.
No, 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 you're fine. I think we get that you were a very busy senior. I think
Yes, I'm very
that's
busy.
really apparent. Um,
I remember that I went to see you, John, at one point, and you said, "Can you tell me like what industry you want to work in or a city so we can narrow that down?" And I felt like I couldn't even do that. It was really hard for me. So I think Frank and Hannah also helped with some of those parameters where I think they saw I enjoyed working in the spatial and collaborative setting, and they recommended I focus on New York and exhibit design. So I was like, great.
Very
Thank
cool.
you.
Very cool.
Helped.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
speaking of which, you are geographically in New York. You're in Brooklyn, right?
Hmm.
Very cool. My old stomping grounds. Um, so what was your first job after you graduated?
Yes. So I first had an internship for and then became a junior designer at Ralph Applebaum Associates, which is a museum exhibit development and design firm. And it was just wonderful. I really loved that. And I was there for 3 years total.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how did you get that job?
So, it was difficult at first. I felt the summer after graduation, I was still interning at Prior, which was a really nice thing to have. But I think I came to a point where I realized after growing up in and living in Ann Arbor for my school years, I was really ready for a change. And Frank and you were like, go to New York. So um, I was like, okay, I have to figure this out. And I think I ran into a school friend when we were traveling who also wanted to move to New York. So we took a leap of faith and did that together, like found an apartment after a really hellish search. And I don't think that process has gotten easier, unfortunately. Um, but I didn't have a job or internship at that time. It was basically impossible, it felt like, to get an internship in New York without being there, which multiple people told me when I tried to interview. So I really hope that, I guess non sequitur, but I really hope post pandemic remote work changes that. It was a huge privilege to be able to move there in the first place without a job. And it really lit a fire under me to like find something fast. So I just sent out tons of emails and applications. And I think I had heard about RAA from two different people. So one was a former student of Hannah or Frank's who I spoke with on the phone. He mentioned it, and then someone else like mentioned RAA. So when I heard about it twice, that really sparked my interest. And one of the people was able to make an introduction to someone there. So that really helped me get an interview. And then the timing was just lucky. They had an intern leave just as I reached out, and they just needed someone on relatively short notice, which maybe it was also related to the fact that it was the fall and not the summer. Maybe it was a slightly slower intern time. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. Um, and so you had that summer after you graduated, stayed in Ann Arbor. Did you save up money to be able to move?
Yeah, I mean, I thankfully it only took about a month before I found that internship, so that was really lucky, but I really needed that. Yeah.
Yeah. So here you are, new graduate, finishing internship with Prior. Now it's more towards September.
Mhm.
And did you actually move like in early fall?
Yes, so I think I moved like in September. Um, it was either late August, early September. It must have been late August because it would be the first of the month, and then I think I got the internship at RAA like early October.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's fast. Good for you. I love that. I also love the observation of um, okay, this is sort of desperate. I need to light a fire because I need to have a job. So that,
Yeah.
yeah, I think that happens more often than people realize. Um, but it sounds like you know, reached out a lot.
Mhm.
It sounds like you understood the importance of, you know, creating a network of people who can be helpful, but also maintaining that network as part of not just, you know, your own life and your creativity, but certainly around a job search, you know, to
Mhm.
be able to reach out to people. So I love that. Um, so here's this, you know, lovely company that you were with for 3 years, and they actually did exhibition design, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So were you doing multiple kinds of design with them? What were you doing?
Yeah, I was really focused on basically museum exhibit design and environmental design. So they're just really incredible at designing spaces and narrative exhibitions and corporate um, spaces, just all environmentally. And it was really its own education in a way too, because and a very specific kind of niche type of design with its own constraints. I mean, I think it was incredibly rigorous and very type driven, and things were built to last, were designed to last. So there were certain ways in which creatively you were pushed to like I don't know what I'm trying to say. I guess it was like really a wonderful education, almost felt like another degree in a way. And it was
Yeah,
such an incredible community of designers. Oh, I guess what I was trying to say before is like it's not something digital where it could get updated on a website. Like it's literally etched in stone. and meant to last for 100+ years. So that was really exciting to get to work on that. And one of my very favorite projects that actually opened is the Museum of Natural History's Halls of Gems and Minerals, which was just so cool to work on.
Yeah, yeah. What other types of projects and clients did you get to work
Yeah.
with?
Um, Definitely quite a few universities um, that had, for example, different exhibits. I mostly was on the Museum of Natural History, actually, on two different projects with them for like much of the 3 years. Um, I'm trying to think. I can't think top of mind, like what I'm not, they're NDAs for some of them, so I don't want to say if
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
not really
thanks.
positive, but I guess one I can say that also opened was the University of Wisconsin had this outdoor park for alumni and students. So I worked on that, and that was really fun since it was also like outdoor and involved landscape design and interesting outdoor sort of production techniques. And just overall, it was a lot of collaboration with architects and with uh, writers and content coordinators. And it just felt really important to be, I don't know, I guess working on exhibits and telling really important stories. Oh, okay, here's a big one. The Obama Presidential Center. Like, how did I forget and not say that right away? I worked on the pitch for the Obama Presidential Center, which RAA won, and that was just a huge moment for the company and felt amazing.
So this is for the one in Chicago.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. Wow, very cool. Look at you, honey Nathan. Wow. Um, so let's talk a little nuts and bolts here. Um, New York is expensive, and one of the questions that we ask is, what was your starting salary, and was it enough?
Yeah. So my starting salary was about $35,000, which I think is pretty standard for design internships,
Yeah.
although I don't know if things have changed since then.
No, it's
Um,
pretty standard.
that is pretty standard.
Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't negotiate since it was so tough to do early on in the career, and I just felt lucky, I guess, to get the internship and needed something.
Yeah.
But I really think it's tough if you don't necessarily have as much leverage as you do maybe later on. Um, but
So,
always try to negotiate. I mean,
yeah, but
I've learned that later.
yeah, you already told us that you had a roommate. I don't know if you still do, but certainly at that time,
Mhm.
you found an apartment, you have a roommate. Um, what what did your roommate do? What was that person's profession?
My roommate Haley is also a graphic designer.
Ah,
Yeah, so we met at Stamps, and I think we ran into each other like when we were traveling, and it all worked out with the timing that she wanted to move to New York. So she was working for a startup that made clothing called Faherty Brand. I never know if I'm saying it right.
yeah, yeah.
um, and I actually just went to her wedding earlier this summer.
Oh, how lovely. Cool. Very cool. So like here you are, both of you starting out in design in New York and helping each other out, obviously, sharing expenses and all those kinds of things. With the people that, you stay in touch with, do you think that that's a pretty common experience that people get started that way?
Yeah, absolutely. You mean just moving to New York and having a roommate or roommates?
And kind of starting entry level, at the bottom, is that what you think is just like the most common experience?
Um, from a graphic design standpoint, I think so, or at least in the circle of people I've kept in touch with from Michigan. Yeah, I think we all like gravitated towards each other and like reflected on our different experiences. And I think it did feel like a nice community. Like I think one of our friends like stayed over with different people while he was looking for a job. Like people really were helping each other out and trying to share as much information as possible. So it's good. It's really helpful to have that community. And some of those people I actually didn't know in undergrad because I think some of the classes I was taking towards the end were people the year younger than me
Mm,
since I was in the design classes so late. So some of them I met in New York, just like friends of friends. So it was so
Yes.
wonderful to meet that community. I guess I certainly had other friends in the art school, but most of them ended up going down like more fine arts paths rather than graphic design.
I love the term community. I think that in the creative world, we talk about networking, but what we really mean is support. What we really mean is making sure that you're surrounded by people who share your interests, who want to help, who are supporting each other. And I think students don't always quite get that while they're students. But I think later, like you have discovered, you find these people and you gravitate toward each other. That's another great word, gravitate, toward each other. So you were with this first company, RAA, for 3 years.
Yeah.
What happened next?
What happened next? So by the end of the 3 years, I guess I should say while I was working there, I also was taking some continuing education classes at the School of Visual Arts
Ah,
just to sort of supplement my design education since I started later on with design classes. So I think those started to push me in a slightly different direction and expose me to other types of design beyond um, exhibit design. And so I think that sort of lit a curiosity um, to just explore more of the design world. And like I was saying, exhibit design has pretty specific types of projects, types of constraints. You're designing things to last. It's a much slower time frame and architectural timelines. Like for me, being out of school and working 3 years on the same couple projects, I think I was ready just for a different pace. And I also wanted to explore branding and editorial design. So from there, I tried another company working on environmental design, but not specifically museums. So for a year, I was at a company called Rockwell Group, uh, and I enjoyed it, but I was ready to like go even further. So then I worked in house at a company called ArtNet. And I heard about that job from another stamps grad, actually. So that was
yeah.
another example of the community being there, which was wonderful. So I was there for about a year. That was amazing. I got to try out just in-house design, learn about the agency they were working with on their rebrand, work on a biannual magazine with this great art director. And then the pandemic hit, so I got laid off, which was not fun. It was awful. Health insurance is incredibly expensive. So again, I had this fire to like figure something out and just applied to a bunch of places, networked, and then I was able to find a freelance job at Spotify. So I was there for about a year and a half, which was another in-house position. And that was another incredible learning experience, like working at a scale that I just had never worked at before in terms of the amount of output of the work, the scale of working with different agencies, um, and just with so many different stakeholders. It was a real growth experience. And I learned so much that I'm so thankful for. And then about a year and a half after that, I moved to the agency where I am now called Aruliden, which focuses on brand projects and also has the industrial design practice and does quite a lot of packaging design.
Very cool. So I want to jump back to Spotify. So you were working with them under contract, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And could you negotiate that? What was that like?
Um, that's a good question. In theory, I think I could have, and I probably should have, but it was like June 2020, like everyone was getting laid off.
Mm,
And again, and also because it was tech, the salary was at a much higher starting point than anything I'd had previously because the design industry salaries are just different from in-house or from tech salaries in most cases, from what I've seen. So for those reasons, again, this makes me sound so bad, like I never negotiate, but I think I've definitely negotiated, just not in these two instances where I guess I didn't feel that I had a lot of leverage. Um,
yeah, and I totally get that because obviously the pandemic started for real in March, and then you got that gig in June. So you were probably living off savings and maybe some freelance gigs here and there for about 3 months. Um,
yeah,
and
exactly.
so I get like, okay, I am not gonna. push my luck here. I'm just going to take this. I completely understand that. Yeah.
Definitely. But it's funny too, looking back, like in that time that I was unemployed, I actually was, I guess I should say I was freelancing because technically I
Yeah.
wasn't totally unemployed.
Yeah.
Um, because I reached out to an art director who I knew through another art director I'd worked with in the past. And she had a project, and I had so much time to throw myself into it that I really did learn a lot. I mean, I was really anxious and applying to like working on that basically half the time and working on applications the other half the time. But in retrospect, I actually am grateful for the time to work on that and the ability to learn from her and collaborate with her, because she's one of my favorite people to work with still. So yeah.
Yeah. I'm wondering, um, at this point, it's 7 years, but um, not so long ago that you have completely forgotten what it felt like to be a student, but also long enough that you you have some multiple jobs that you've had, different types of experiences. As you look back to when you were a student, is there anything that you really wish you had done that, would have been helpful?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think for whatever reason, I didn't know so much about the portfolio reviews or career boot camp. I think it sounds like one of those things, or maybe both, weren't totally like in place yet when I was a student, but in retrospect, I think those things would have been so helpful. I think there were portfolio reviews, and maybe I went to one or something, but I think more focus on that could have been really helpful. And just in general, trying to um, reach out to the alumni network.
Mm.
I think people do try to be helpful. Yeah.
My experience with alums in particular is that people do want to be helpful. I mean, there's always exceptions, but I'm with you on that. It's like tap into, other people's experiences, advice, feedback, because they're there and usually they really want to help. Um, I'm wondering too, um, what advice do you have for current students who, whether they're interested in graphic design, exhibition design, or maybe none of the above, but thinking about, oh my gosh, how do I get my first job out of college? What advice do you have for them?
Um, that's a good question. I think that one thing that I definitely would advise is to do a lot of informational interviews. I think it's such a helpful research process. Um, you just learn so much, and asking lots of questions, and trying to come up with questions beforehand so you know what you want out of it will help the other person feel like their time is being respected, and it will teach you a lot and hopefully create a network. And I think that's just so helpful too, because those sorts of things can lead to jobs later. Like my second job I got because someone who I had had an informational interview with like 2 years prior remembered me and reached out. So that was how I got my second job. Basically, I worked for her, and she was someone who I guess I'd researched on LinkedIn and like reached out to.
Yeah.
So those sorts of things can happen. And I think,
Was
yeah, just being, oh, go ahead.
was that an alum?
She was not an alum, no,
Oh,
but
okay.
she was someone I actually met through an alum. So one of my friends, I think from the residential college, went to Columbia for architecture school, and she had worked with this person. So when I graduated, I was really grasping at straws, like trying to email everyone I knew, even if they weren't from stamps, even if they weren't a designer, just saying, like, do you know anyone in your network who would be willing to speak with me, who does anything approximating this? Like keeping it very open. And
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
that actually can help too, because also with my Spotify job, I didn't just reach out to my design network, I just reached out to the larger network and sort of had an introduction about my skill set and my experience, and said, just pass this along, please, to anyone who would need this kind of person to work with. So I really think just keeping things broad, reaching out to people. I think trying to be fearless and not counting yourself out because you don't know if you're totally qualified. This is something I still deal with
Mm,
anxiety over. um, but just trying to like apply to as much as you can. And then I would also say focusing on human connection, like writing to people instead of necessarily always writing to job postings, which usually go to HR, which get dozens, if not hundreds of applications. I've had more success writing directly to people, um, just because they're more likely to respond. And I usually, as I was saying before with informational interviews, I try to be proactive about my applications and not necessarily wait for a job to be posted somewhere, but to research companies that are really interesting to me, or people whose work I really admire and would want to learn from, and reach out to them directly, because I think then that could help. Like in my experience, this woman remembered me and reached out when she did have an opening. So that can happen too.
yeah. You, uh, earlier in our conversation, you talked about being curious, and I actually hear that coming around full circle. That the same thing that impels your curiosity also, I think, allows you to be more comfortable reaching out to people and connecting with people. So, amazing. I love that this is, what you've been doing. And if people want to be in touch with you, if they want to see maybe even some of your work, what is the best way for people to find you?
Yes. So let me I can just put this in the chat.
Yeah.
So let me just type this out and then I will drop it in here. But my website is hannahnathans.com. And it has some of my, I guess, public facing projects that I'm allowed to show.
No
um,
NDAs involved.
yeah. um, so yeah, whoops. Oh my gosh, why is there a typo in this? Sorry.
Yeah, that's okay.
Dropping it in one more time without the email typo. But yeah, I really encourage everyone in this call to reach out to me or to any other alumni, um, who have interesting paths to you. I think so. There's so much out there, and as much as you can follow your gut instinct about what resonates with you and what you enjoy doing and the types of environment you like working in, the types of projects you like working on, like trying to do research into those things and seek like-minded people out, or not necessarily like-minded, but people who will challenge you and help you grow in those directions. Just the better your career will be, I think.
I love that. I love that. We definitely have time for some questions. So if anybody on the call has a question, you can, either just speak up because we're a small group today. You can drop it in the chat, whatever you're more comfortable with. In the meantime, I am dropping a link to a really short survey, guys. We're talking like minutes to fill out, to get your feedback on our conversation with Hannah today. So again, if you have any questions, now is the time. And this is where there's like this awkward pause where we wait to see if there's any questions. I always think that like the Jeopardy music should play during during this part.
I know it's always hard to ask questions. And if this isn't the right forum for you, like as I said, please feel free to email me or reach out, and I'm happy to talk one-on-one.
Yeah. All right. So we'll give it one more minute. So, what would you change if you could change anything along your career path? Is that Megan? Thank you, Megan.
Thank you for the question. This is a really good and a really tough question. Um, I don't know if I have like one clean answer for this, but I think my umbrella answer would just be to have less anxiety about not feeling qualified and reaching out to people earlier on. I think that I've certainly had hangups in the past about not feeling ready for something or not feeling qualified for something. But what I didn't realize looking back now that I'm like more mid to senior level is there's actually a power that comes with being young too. And there's a different opportunity because people don't expect the same skill sets, or they anticipate that you'll have a lot of growth ahead of you. So you don't have to have it all figured out. You don't have to know everything yet. And for that reason, I would just say try to be as fearless as possible and don't discount yourself. Like write to your design heroes. You truly never know. So I think I would say like have less fear about those sorts of things and go for it.
Did you ever go to the Q&A sessions with anybody at the speaker series?
Oh, I did. That was another really great thing that I haven't mentioned yet. Yeah, I went to several of the penny stamps lecture dinners, and those were really incredible because you're just surrounded by interesting people who are like graduate students or the the speaker, of course. And I think those were some really exciting opportunities too to just yeah, like learn more about their work and yeah, those were really great opportunities.
Yeah. So just so you know, obviously during the pandemic, um, we didn't have any of those. And I know that moving forward, they're going to plan like special events for each different kind of speaker as opposed to that standard dinner every Thursday. So students who are interested in that, just know um, Bill Burgard will send you info and your opportunities. Hopefully he'll share that with me too, and then I can, you know, boost it in my promos with you guys. Um, you know, what you were talking about earlier with the anxiety, I work with a lot of creatives, obviously, and what I find is imposter syndrome is really common with creative people, and part of it is that we're so likely to compare ourselves to other people. Um, oh, hi Danielle. Um, and you know, am I good enough, et cetera, et cetera. And I think that's part of what you're referring to. And I love the idea of power early in your career that you don't realize you have. I love that. Um, it's a very different sort of thing. And just this past week, on Friday, we had a creative recruiter from Meta, Facebook, who also talked about this, that the expectations, when you're first starting out are very different. And that, for lack of a better way of phrasing this, they're actually quite low. It's like, no, 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 we're going to teach you how to do that. That's okay. We'll teach you how to do that.
Oh, absolutely. Some friends and I in New York from stamps were reflecting on feeling like looking back at our old work and being like, really, this worked to get us internships and jobs. But truly, I think what we were talking about with finding like feeling interested and trying to find people who you're interested in learning from can just do so much. Like if I meet someone who is engaged and clearly like curious and hardworking, that really goes a long way. And so many of these skills can be picked up or taught along the way.
Yeah, yeah. Um, so, Hannah, thank you so much. We're going to wrap this up. Are there any final words that you have for everybody?
Um, I guess my last words, well, what you were talking about with imposter syndrome in the creative industry, I think there's both imposter syndrome and just more broadly, it's really hard to fit like creativity into, I don't know, a capitalist mindset and like trying to like you might not feel like an imposter in your own work, but can that also get you a job? Like those can be different things. So I think my last words would be um to kind of find your value and find your kind of keep an how do I want to phrase this? Like remember your own value, even if certain jobs aren't working out, that doesn't mean, it could be due to any number of reasons. And that doesn't mean you can't have your own practice and your own interests. And sometimes it's actually good to keep a balance and a separation between some of your personal work and what you do for money. So
Yeah,
Yeah, and don't give up.
yeah, I love that. That amazing advice. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Everybody on the call, thank you all. It's been a pleasure having Hannah, and I'm going to hit the stop button.